So I watched Hitman recently. This is the new Richard Linklater movie on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. I went into it with seeing all the reviews from the theatrical release, which was just a couple weeks before it came out on Netflix. So there hadn't been a lot of critics or a lot of audience members who saw this yet, but all of them seemed to really love it. It was like 97% critic score on the Rotten Tomatoes, 95% audience score. So I went into this thinking, wow, okay, I'd never really heard of this before, but I don't know, it looks kind of like maybe a funny, comedy, romance comedy, crime thing. I don't know. It looks fine. I'm not really that familiar with its lead actors like Glen Powell. I've seen him in Top Gun Maverick, but pretty much have no real connection to him. Adria Arjano? Arjona. I always say her name wrong. It's like too many A's and D's and I just get all mixed up. But she's Bix from Andor, so I automatically love her and she's gorgeous. And so, and they really play into that heavily in Hitman. Anyways, I thought, okay, I like the director, School of Rock, Dazed and Confused, good movies, and a lot of other classic movies. So this should be fun. And I started watching it, and it starts out kind of like an oddball comedy. He plays this guy Gary, kind of loosely based on a real person. He's a professor at a college. He also sort of moonlights as this tech guy for this police sting unit. The purpose of this unit is to catch bad guys who are trying to hire hitmen. The premise is that in real life, there's no such thing really as hitmen, but they put these ads out there and then they catch people trying to off their husbands or whatever. One thing comes to another and he ends up getting into that position as the fake hitman, and he turns out to be really, really good at it. So there's kind of an extended first act. I don't know, it's more than a montage, but it's really kind of pretty rushed, where we see a lot of the different personas that he takes on as these fake hitmen. And he's usually in costume or he does a voice. And this stuff's funny. It's funny, and I think they could have made the whole movie about that. Like, you could have had some stuff go wrong and he had to, escape from the police or from, somebody's trying to kill him, or somebody hires a real hitman to kill him. And so he's got to, there's a lot of ways that this could have gone where we still used Powell doing these funny characters. But that's not the way the movie goes. Instead, it goes headlong into romcom. Romcom, or I don't know. I mean, it is pretty much a rom-com for the second act of this movie. So he meets this chick, Madison. They hit it off really well. He meets her when she's trying to hire him to off her husband, who's terrible, and she's afraid of him, yada, yada, yada. So he takes pity on her. I think he, obviously also wants to bang her. So he convinces her not to go through with this so she doesn't get busted. And then she goes on her merry way. But later, she splits up with her husband and she texts him and they hook up, and he continues to pretend to be this character Ron that he's playing. So he's not admitting that he's not a hitman. He continues this whole act. Now, we've seen this in plenty of other comedy of errors, right? We've seen this in many other rom-coms where somebody pretends to be somebody they're not to get the girl. So again, this is not treading any new ground, but we've sort of switched genres from the first act to the second act. And we lose at this point all the funny stuff that Ron was doing Gary was doing, Glen Powell was doing in the first act. Now it's mostly about him and Madison and sort of the different ways that things start to go wrong there. And again, throughout these first two acts, I'm thinking, okay, like, this is fine. Well, I don't like it that much. It's okay. Like, Madison's fun to look at, but they haven't given her any personality, really. I mean, she's got a little bit of personality, but she doesn't have backstory. She doesn't have any character development. They just don't make her very interesting beyond, like, she's hot, and now this guy who used to be kind of timid has taken on his new Ron personality and is getting laid constantly. So that's kind of where the story is at act number 2, until things go wrong and they run across her ex-husband, who then tries to hire a hitman, Gary, though he doesn't know it's him at first, to kill Madison. Now, Gary throws the whole thing off. He doesn't accept the job or try to get the guy busted. I'm not really sure why, because he could have just solved it all right there. But he does go back and tell Madison. And then, when he leaves, she goes and kills her ex-husband. So this is a big twist. Now, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this isn't really a rom-com anymore. She killed her husband. And then we learn that he had an insurance policy of $1 million. They're not fully divorced yet, so she's going to get this money. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is film noir. We just didn't realize it was film noir because they sort of disguised it from us this whole time as a goofball comedy and a rom-com. But now in Act 3, we're switching gears to film noir. And I'm thinking, this is kind of cool. I actually like the direction that this is going, right? Then, he goes to he knows she did it. The police want him to go in and try to, fake her out, trick her into admitting it while he's wearing a wire. But he goes in with his phone and the notes app and he's sort of telling her, guiding her on what to say. And they fool the police. Because the police in this movie are fucking stupid. And they let her off, basically, without any more investigation. Actual police would would probably go and interview her, you would think. They would probably, check if, where her alibi and all this other stuff. But none of that happens in this movie. What does happen is Austin Emilio's character, Austin, who's Dwight from The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead, he kind of lost his job to Gary. And so he has got a bone to pick with him, and he's been kind of investigating them this whole time, and he's wise to what's going on. So he blackmails them, and he wants a cut of that cash, that insurance cash. And instead of going along with that, Madison poisons him. Not to death. She gets Gary to then, he volunteers, but, he suffocates him with a plastic bag. It's pretty, and then they have sex, like right there, while he's like dying on the floor. It's pretty messed up. It's pretty dark at this point, right? But I'm thinking the whole time, Madison is the femme fatale. Madison is going to take the money and run. She's going to leave Gary empty-handed. Maybe she'll even fuck him over, right? Like, this is what's happened. I've seen Double Indemnity. I've seen a bunch of film noir movies. And this one, we just didn't know it was film noir until the end. This is the depth we're giving this character. Since we didn't give her backstory, we know nothing about her life. She's less fleshed out than a chick in a Reacher novel. Like, they got to give her something, right? Like, we can't just leave the leading lady with such a one-dimensional part, and we can't just end the movie with them getting away with it, can we? It's got to be that she screws him over, and he's busted for the murders, and she gets away with the money, right? Wrong. They do live happily ever after. The cops don't investigate what happened. Somehow, and we never are told how, they get away and they live happily ever after. And the final couple scenes are him giving a lecture about seizing your identity to his class, and then them sitting at breakfast with their kids, laughing about how they met. And I don't know if this is supposed to be some sort of twisted, dark thing that we're supposed to be like, oh my, they got away with it. But it doesn't really work if that's the case, because the abusive ex-husband and the corrupt cop aren't really like, they're not that big of, you don't feel any sympathy for them, so you're not like too shocked that the good guys got away with it. And it's not really like subverting our expectations with film noir, because we didn't even really think about it being film noir until the end, and it really didn't end up being film noir as it was. So I'm not sure where they're going with this really cheesy, treacly, implausible, awkward, annoying ending, but I don't like it, obviously. A good movie that's like the bad guy got away with it. I'm thinking The Usual Suspects, when at the end, Kevin Spacey's character walks off and he loses his limp, and you realize that's Kaiser Soze, and it's like, whoa, he got away with it, there's a lot of movies like that. I'm not going to try to list a bunch of them, but there are movies where it's like they got away with murder. Holy shit. But this one's kind of more like, that's it? Like, it wasn't that funny. It wasn't that good of a rom-com, and the end was just them getting away with murder. And I know there's all this stuff, he quotes Nietzsche in the beginning, and there's all this stuff about changing your identity and like the id, the ego and the superego and all this shit. But honestly, it's like a movie that wants you to think that it's smart, but it's really not. Often it's just kind of bland. Like, this is such a generic movie. It's a movie, ironically, that doesn't have any clue what kind of identity it wants, and I just don't understand why it has such an incredibly high Rotten Tomatoes score. Excuse me. Both audiences and critics love this movie. And if it was just audiences, I'd be like, okay, it's just it's a crowd pleaser, whatever. I get it. If it was just critics, I would think maybe they've been wined and dined by the studios or something. Like Netflix sent them on a junket to watch this movie on a mountain, in a mountaintop. I don't fucking know. But it's both. It's both. And so I can't really understand it, because this doesn't seem like a movie that would really woo critics that much. And frankly, I don't really see, it feels like a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes movie. 65, maybe. if we're being real generous, maybe 70% I could see that. For me, it's like a 2 out of 4 stars if I'm going to do a 4-star thing. It's not fresh. It's not fresh. I'm sorry. It's Glen Powell. He does his impressions and his personas, whatever. Those are funny, but those are glossed over. Those are pushed right out the window. Like, that's just a bit in the beginning, and it's like you could do that in an SNL sketch, right? The rom-com bits, it's again, it's like a movie that doesn't know what it wants to be and never really fully embraces any of those things. And they could have stuck the landing with a good film noir twist. With Madison turning out to be the femme fatale and Gary getting fucked over and she was using him the whole time, and that could have been really savage and awesome. But it just ended, I don't know, with a whimper, not a bang. I guess the banging was in the middle section. Anyways, let me know what you thought. Maybe you're one of those, people and I'm like scratching my head over and you're like, Eric, you're an idiot and this was a great movie and you just need to like chill out and like stuff. You never like anything. You hate everything. Such a hater. Or maybe you were with me on this one and you didn't really like it, or maybe you're not going to watch it. Whatever, say some stuff in the comments. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Peace.